Hi everyone, I'm today's host, Leah. I'm really happy that you can join today's session of Leader for Young Leaders. Let me introduce myself. I'm 11 years old and I have been swimming for 11 years. I've also been learning mermaiding for 4 years. I focus on mermaid competitions and performance, and I've completed and performed in Taiwan, Singapore, and Indonesia. This morning, I even did a mermaid performance at the opening ceremony of the National Swimming Competition.
Here with you tonight as your co-host. And I'm the Global ESG Leadership Organization founder, and I'm focusing on transform the ESG into the real world actions. So let's go back to Tian Tian.
We are happy to welcome Mr. Luca. He works around the world to help major events like the Olympic Games and the big city become more sustainable and supportive of young people. He had advised the Winter Olympics and many international sports projects. Today, he will share how events like the Olympics can inspire youth and help big cities build a better future. Luca, thank you for joining us. Please start it by sharing a little about your journey with our audience.
Thank you, Tian, for the introduction, and thank you for having me here tonight. It's a pleasure. Just introduction by myself, starting from I'm a former athlete, track and field, 5 and 10K, and then I moved to mountain races, cross-country races, so I've always been a runner. And because of that, then I've started my career within the sports environment. So basically, my dream started when I was very, very young. And then when I stopped to be athlete, I decided to continue to be part of that environment that is a sport is very inspirational for the new generation, and it's very inspirational for families that support the kids. It's very inspirational for local communities and youth that they come from the local communities and the remote area. That is the power of sport and the huge impact that it can have in the social and the society behavior. Then I worked many, many years in track and field, from world championships, world cups, national championships, continental championships, meeting new people, meeting new environment, working in different environments. And when you work in such events, don't think that only you have the chance to meet champions, but also you have the chance to meet and to work day to day with the locals, with the local people, from the local labor, which are porter, driver, security. So when we think about such events, embrace everything, not just what we watch on television. There is a huge world behind the scene, which is much bigger for what we can see on television. Both sides are very inspirational for the locals and the youth. And then after many years of track and field, I've started to dream to work in the Olympic Games. And so that's happened. My first Olympics, I've worked in 5 different Olympic Games between winter and summer. Right now, I'm working on my 6th one, the next Winter Olympic Games in Torino, in Milano Cortina, in Italy. And then I've been consultant in the International Olympic Committee for many years, which I was in charge again of put at disposal of the system, because it's a really huge system, my knowledge to make the qualification rules fair for everybody, which is not easy because there is money, there is political interest, there is medals, there is national interest. And so make a fair qualification system is something very, very complicated, which take into consideration many, many things. Again, this is a lot of things that happen behind the scene. And then I did work in many other sports, because once you reach the top, like the Olympic Games, then you start to think what I'm missing, which events I would like to work with. So sailing, football, cycling, and then again back to sailing, and then sport events, because having a Winter Olympic sport experience opened the door to that. So that is, in brief, is really my career done from different corners. Local organized committee, International Sport Federation, International Olympic Committee, and then suppliers, which is the last part, but it's also the one that goes more toward the locals. And in brief, as I said, this is my path and the journey I've done so far.
So thank you very much. And your experience in the Olympic is very inspiring. So what kind of the advice you will give the young people if they want to work for Olympic?
Oh, I think that for everyone, not just for the youth, but mainly for the youth, the best experience ever that they could try to have is become a voluntaries for the organized committee. The voluntaries are many, many, many more person than any paid staff. And they're needed. And they're so needed that in the end of the games, athlete and delegation, what they remember always most when they go back home is the human contacts that they had with the voluntaries, because they stay hand to hand for sometimes almost 1 month, depending the role inside the delegation, depending the athlete, depending the role of the voluntaries. And there are many, many possibilities to have an experience, which goes from helping to clean up the dining room inside where the athletes stay, the Olympic Village, to become driver for them when they have dedicated vehicles to go from one side to the other one, to go for the training, to the home or the accommodation that they have, to be translator. Often they are voluntaries that they know the local language and they know the language of the delegation that they are accompanying. So there are so many, many roles. And I think that from there is really the first experience to enjoy this huge atmosphere and this party atmosphere that goes for almost 3 weeks if we think about the Olympic Games. But Chini, let me say something. When we talk about Olympic Games, for us, work in the environment, that word doesn't mean only Olympic Games. It's including also the Paralympic Games. Because when you work, the organized committee is in charge and responsible to organize both. So Olympic Games is for normal person, and the Paralympics are for multiple kind of physical disabled. So this is really important. Paralympics is only for physical disabled and not mental disabled, which they have another special event, which is called Special Olympics. So physical disabled is part of common language Olympics. And in their case, it's something that lasts for 7 weeks competition with 1 week in the middle. And that is not a great experience, because being in touch with the para-athlete and the delegation of the para-athlete is from human side is an experience that touch and is something that the youth can really bring with us at any stage. Because if I make a comparison with the experience that they can have inside the sport, the world sport, and we bring inside daily life, school, workplace, social events, having both experience and mostly be sensitive and sensible toward the para athlete is an adding value that from human side that can gain, everybody of us can gain. And myself, I did. In the beginning, I was really afraid to say or do something. And if we're going to have a minute, I will make you laugh with some really funny episode of by mistakes that I have done. But then that's teach me how sometimes when we think about the disabled person, we make the problem and they don't have any problem.
Thank you for the different perspective.
And I have some questions for you too. Sports and major events like the Olympics play a big role in youth development. What can young people learn from sports or mega events that can help them in life and future careers?
Well, I can answer with just one word: many and multiples, which are already 2 words, by the way. There are many because there are many, many athletes that they become champions because when they were 10, 11, 12, they were watching the Olympic Games and they were thinking, one day I want to be there. So that is a huge impact from emotional, from inspiration, for make, rise dreams. But on the other side, if we go and check from business point of view, there are many HR departments in multiple companies, which when they make the interviews or when they make the selection to hire new employee, those that they come from sport background, so they've been athletes for a while, even without becoming a champion, but just playing for the team of the school, of the college, or the local club in the city where they live. They have different behavior because who come from sport, naturally, they are a person able to work in team. They are a person able to respect the rules. They are a person capable to play with the rules until the limits. So they are loyal. That is a huge difference. So often when two persons with the same profile but with a sport background, they come to the final stage on interview, HR always, so human resources often, they value more who has a background sport because they can become more loyal to the employer, sorry. They can become more loyal with their colleagues. They can become more loyal to the task and the project to which they are assigned. So there are many multiple positive aspects from anybody that can have an experience inside the sports career, either from business side or from athlete side, which they will bring with them forever and they will label in a positive way with that.
Thank you for your answering.
You have
You're welcome.
You have to work with many cities around the world on the sustainability and Olympic planning. So is there one city like the project that you impress you most?
Yes, there is one city. There are multiple. Every city have impressed me. When we talk about sustainability, it's very difficult to say which one is being more sustainable because we need to analyze things from different point of view. The impact that they have done before to build the venues, so to transform the city, and that is one aspect. And there is a huge race between the different cities who have done or who have left less impact. But then we need to see things on the other side now. What's happened to the venue after the 2 months of competition, so the 2 busy months? We have very bad example, unfortunately, which cities that have built among 36 venues, competition venues, so this is more or less the number. We have example that over 30, they are not in use anymore. So if we look at that in terms of impact, it's very bad because everything has been done before, then it's not used. And I'm not looking that only from cost-wise, which meaning, anyway, money of the society, money of the people. It's really also the bad impact that you live in the environment when you have buildings that are not used. So that is pollution in the end of the day. So it's very difficult to say. However, if I think about both sides, so before and after, and then we have also the during. But during is even more too complicated to explain because if we make the example, now I'm talking only about the during, so the weeks of the games. If we think about Paris, so only last year, and the city was completely locked down. There were no traffic. Pollution went down so much just because people, they left the city to don't be inside the huge hurricane that the Olympics bring. From security point of view, spectators, a lot of delegation that go back and forth, guests for the sponsors. So the city transformed and the people that went out, meaning less cars in the city, less pollution. But if you would do the same example with Rio wasn't the same. Wasn't the same. So again, but then if we take in comparison the balance between before and the after, I would say that the best project ever has been London 2012. And the main difference is done, and now I need to make a technical description how the organized committees, so the local organized committee, they works. 90% of the cases, the local organized committee is a public corporate, meaning is the or government of the nation that hosts the games, which is in charge of the organization. In other terms, public money. London was one of the few, after Barcelona 1992, which was private. That's why I've been impressed. That was the only case out of my memories that 15 months before the Olympics, all the apartments of the Olympic Village, which meaning an area that is capable to host 25,000 people, a small city, but it's a village for the Olympics, was already sold out. So they already sold the apartment of the Olympic Village 15 months before the Olympics. Meaning that now, if we go back there are normal people like all of us living there. If I make the same comparison about the Winter Olympic Games in Torino, the Olympic Village in Torino, so there were 3 at that time, the one in city, so downtown, just behind the main headquarter office of FCA, ex-Fiat, is completely abandoned. Nobody's living there. So has been paid to use buildings only for 2 months. That is a huge difference. If then I look at the Olympic Stadium, London again, part of the project was the stadium has been built with a capacity of 90,000 seats. A stadium so huge and big can be used only for the opening of the Olympic Games. There is no other events that can fulfill all those seats. The project was to build a stadium for 90,000 seats, but today is only 35. Because the year after, they have cut the stadium and reduced the capacity. So they've done something that nowadays is still used, because a stadium with a capacity of 35,000 seats is usable every weekend. Football match, concert, exhibition, whatsoever. So that was really impressive, the way that they've thought everything on ahead. So London would be my answer, Jenny.
But how about Paris? Because a lot of people talking about Paris is more sustainable Olympic. So what is your opinion between Paris and London Olympic?
It's very difficult to measure really what means sustainable organizing committee, because if we look only at the infrastructure, is something. But if you look at in total to the full picture, so how many people that work there, where they were coming from, how much they've paid them, how they have treated them, the work condition, and so forth and so forth is different. We speak a lot about Paris only because we know that they have built a lot of temporary infrastructure. But even building temporary infrastructure, you pollute a lot. You have a much more labor consuming. You have much more impact on the soil, which with a permanent structure you don't have. So need to be balanced in a different way. They have just approached the project in a different way, which has from paper it seems to be very sustainable. But then if you drag inside the numbers, you see that it's at the same level of any others. But it's the same right now with the Winter Olympic Games in Milano Cortina. They still saying it's the most sustainable, is the one that's never been done before like that, and so forth. But if you then look more in the details, it's also the very first one with an extension of the territory that's never been reached before. And the delegation, they're always the same people. They need to go from one point to the other one. So in terms of transportation, the impact is going to be huge, because you are across the mountains. You can use public transportation. You cannot use train. You need to use van and cars and buses. So they can be sustainable until a certain point, but then in practice, when you pull the total line after, you will see that they are all more or less at the same level, because you can have more attention on one side, but then you reduce attention in the other if you want to maintain. And right now they are increasing the number of the participants. If you want to maintain the same level, it's very tough to reduce the social and environmental impact.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
My second question is, many cities are becoming hubs of information and sustainability. In your view, what makes a city truly sustainable beyond technology and green buildings?
I don't know where you have studied those questions, but it's one more tough than the other one. So let's make this example. To make that kind of evaluation is very, very difficult. And I'm reinforcing the concept that we need to understand what is left in the city after the games. There are cities that they take the excuse of hosting the Olympic Games to transform the city, implementing new technology, making new roads, making new transportation hubs, making new connection from remote area or outside the city area to the city center. And to give an example, I'm not talking now for 1 minute about Olympic Games, but instead Football World Cup. South Africa. So it wasn't just one city, it was the country with 5 cities hosting the matches. Without the Football World Cup, nowadays they would not have the public transportation that they have, they wouldn't have the roads that they have, they wouldn't have the parking hub that they have outside the city, and they would not have public connection between those cities, which they're still working. So that if we think that in terms of sustainability, even if at that moment building all those things had an impact, but nowadays how the community can benefit from all those things is very high, is very important. And that's why it's difficult to make that evaluation. If we think about Barcelona, 1992, they have transformed the city in the same way. After the Olympics became something more popular, attracting much more tourists, having much more things to show. Because during the games, you show any corner of your city and you attract people, and people then they come back. Because you can start to start this kind of communication publicity, if you maintain alive all the public and you have implement before the games, new roads, new connection, then you maintain those, you can gain a lot. And when we say you gain a lot, it's meaning that the local communities, they can have more business to run. They have tourists. They mean money is flowing in the pocket of the normal people. And if we need to take that in consideration as well. That's why a strong planning is needed, just because you need to look into what you want to leave after the games and not just for that 2 weeks. But from answering more specifically to your question, I think that from technology point of view, well, the best of the best is used during the games. From technology from television point of view, technology from communication point of view, technology from security point of view. Never forget that is a very high risk or high target, let's say, event. And the connection between international police forces is very, very high. But then those kind of connection, those kind of systems, they remain. And that's bring us to have more safe and secure society where we live. So it's very huge, the impact. But then if you look at the athlete performances from sport equipment, technology, measurements of different kind of values, of the sport performance they bring, and that's come most of the time from medical aspect, is something that goes in different sector. And sometimes we don't see the direct link, but sometimes when we go to the doctor or when we go to the hospital, we find something there that has been developed for athlete performances a few years before. And that's go inside the entire development that can bring the hosting such huge level of sport events.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, if the young people want to contribute to the sustainable city, what practical entry point would you recommend?
Entry point for the young people.
Yeah, maybe like
Well,
community project or like circular economy, public space.
well, for sure, if we again, if we talk about Olympics is something, but there are 79 sports recognized by the International Olympic Committee, and only 34 are part of the Olympic program, meaning those that we see in television during those 2 weeks. But there are many, many sports. Any sport. So now I'm talking about sport in a transversal way to answer to your question. From many sports which they don't have the television coverage are called poor sport because they need to invent and find resources to host the events. And you host events always because you want to give the chance to the athlete to compete. Local communities that can have a huge role to play in this kind of situation because they can host the athlete, they can host the delegation, so not just the athlete, the members of the delegation. They can put at disposal local infrastructure. They can show to them local tradition, local food, entertain them, make them feel at home for 1 week or 10 days, which normally is the stay of those kind of athletes. And then you give them the possibilities to show to them something that they didn't know before. They go back home, they talk with family and friends, and hereafter they can come back, or someone else can come back because I've heard from someone who's been here that here you have something nice, here you have something I can try. I want to taste this, I want to try that one. And that is the best impact that local communities that can give. And that for sure is the perfect entry point for all those that can live in places where they want to host minor events. But also, this help to bring sport closer to the locals, meaning you can influence easier the youth generation. It's not only what we see in television. When you live an experience like that in live, it's even easier to influence in a positive way the youth because they can try to aim to become that athlete and one day have the possibility to travel to another nation and experience the same treatment that they reserve for the person that they have a host or they've been close to and with for 10 days, 1 week.
Okay, so if you are the committee of IOC, which city you will choose for the next Olympic if you are the one who making the decision, and what is the reason?
Unfortunately, that question is not updated nowadays because there is no more choice. There is only always struggling to find cities to host the events now. So a few years ago, there was a competition, 5, 6 cities, candidates, and then they needed to make the choice. Now they're struggling to get one candidate. And that one is going to become also the host city because from sustainability point of view, sustainable and financial sustainable point of view, hosting such huge events, people and countries that cannot afford anymore. And we need to face this problem. It's very huge. And mostly it's just because the bad financial impact that they have on the society. And nowadays, that is the situation. They're struggling to get one candidate. they are thinking to reinvent the wheel, but as long that they don't change the system, they will struggling to have this kind of new candidates. So now they have secure 2020, talking about summer games, they have secure with Los Angeles 2028, but Los Angeles is already struggling with the budget, and they have secure Australia for 2032, which they're already discussing about the budget again. They need to have a huge review because cost wasn't accurate. That's
But
why now.
How if you are the one making the decision, you can pick up any city if you want, which city you will pick?
With this format or changing the format?
Change the format, whatever. You are the one making the decision. You are the god of the Olympic.
Oh, well, in that case, even if it's not a nice example to bring, but in this case, I will follow the example of football. Football now, they are organizing in multiple countries the same football World Cup. For instance, next year is going to be Canada, USA, and Mexico for the very first time. Why this? Because countries that cannot afford to host by themselves one event just for the cost. I would adopt the same format for the summer games, splitting in an area which is still close, but among multiple countries. So multiple cities, and in that case, you go where the infrastructure are already existing. Meaning sometimes you go outside the city, you go in small communities. If I make an example, in Italy exists only one velodrome. This velodrome, so where the indoor cycling is run. And this velodrome is in the middle of nowhere. Is in North Italy, is between Venice and Milan, to give you a range of area, but it's not in a big city. That's why it's difficult to pick just one city. You need to go where the infrastructure are, because you can reduce the impact. You bring there people that need to be accommodated. So you give money to the hotel, Airbnb, small pension. You bring money to the restaurants. You bring money to the petrol stations. You bring money to the small shops. In that way, you bring something to the locals. Just because you spread all around and in multiple places, all these people, they need to compete.
Good. Tian Tian?
Okay, well, my last question is, looking 10 to 20 years ahead, what qualities or abilities do you think will define the next generation of urban leaders or change makers?
Ken, my apologies. I didn't hear the first part of the question. Can you just repeat the first 4 or 5 words only?
Okay, looking for 10 to 20 years ahead, what qualities or
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. 20 years ahead. Oh, it's difficult, again, answer to this question, because what we need to do, we need to act now. So if we want to have something easier in 20 years ahead, today, people that they manage the decisions, people that they manage the money, so the huge budget, they need to think about people, about the youth generation, not just about the moment, which unfortunately is how these kind of huge systems they work. I want to make profit today. I'm not thinking about tomorrow, because tomorrow maybe I'm not here. But that's not the right way to think. So today we need to change the view. We need to think more that those kind of events, first of all, need to be read as sport development and not money making machine. If you look at this as a sport development, it's meaning, first of all, the country that hosts such events, 5, 7 years ahead, they need to invest money to training new athletes, and as host country, be in a very good and favorable position to have many athletes competing there, because athletes that they compete in such international events in their own country, they are so motivated. Is a unique experience. Competing in Taiwan and competing in Italy for a Taiwanese is completely different. Are two different things. At home, you have so much support. When you walk on the street, people they recognize you. You are motivated, and then you generate a movement, a youth movement that helps to rise and may grow the sport. That will be for sure the first thing that needs to be done now if you want to think 20 years ahead, because then the athletes they can become trainers. So the athlete can teach to the next new generation what and how they can act to go and to become a champion. But those two things need to be run in parallel, and often it's not like that. And you can just check in the results, part the huge countries, but all the other countries, when they have and they host big events at home, often they don't have a chance to win more medals only because they didn't invest in the new generation athlete as sport development to gain new medals. But at the same time, if you build and if you think I want to host events and then I build the infrastructure, then it's meaning I have the infrastructure where my new generation athlete, they can go in training. Because if you will look often, in many countries, certain sports are not developed only because they don't have the infrastructure. Swimming pools, you said earlier is women, and track and field tracks, cycling, velodromes, like I said before, and so forth. And there are so many, even the developed countries, not just the not developed countries. And the example I made before, Italy, which is in cycling, have a huge tradition. In cycling, they have won many gold medals at the Olympics. They got the velodrome only 7 years ago. So that is part of the strategy and the forward thinking that the people need to have now. And that's why 20 years ahead is impossible now to see, but I know what could be done tomorrow morning than to see for what we need to reach in 20 years.
Thank you very much. So we have few questions actually from our audience. So this one, I will helping them to read it. And some are really difficult, so you better prepare it. So one is from Judy. Judy is an event planner, and she has prepared some questions from 4 different perspectives. Youth empowerment, city governance, international business strategy, and long tail effect of the event experienced. So they are looking for your insight. The first is so complicated. First, youth and IOC. So, okay. Sorry. Judy's question is very long. So let me go. How can the IOC ensure the youth talent development is guaranteed a real budget, preventing it from the being sacrificed for short-term value construction through achieving intergenerational equity?
Okay, I'm trying to answer very briefly to this one because it's very tricky and it's very complicated. International Olympic Committee embrace all the National Olympic Committee. And the International Olympic Committee embrace all the international federation. The international federation, then they have the national federation. It's a chain. National federations, then they have at national level different kind of structure. Regional, cities, province, depending how big is the country. So the power from financial perspective of IOC to ensure that at the national level, certain action or certain programs are implemented for the sport development of the youth is mathematically impossible. because in the middle, there is the National Olympic Committee and there is the International Federation, which often they have different interests. So there are special programs for the prom organized by the International Olympic Committee on which you can take part of the program and they can have financial support to training, travel internationally to get qualified and so forth. But unfortunately, there is a commitment, but there is not an action because politically it's impossible to put in place that action to the youth at the local level to be ensured that that money is destined to them for the sport development. That's why sport development is a huge issue together with the non-build new venues at the Olympics.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next is when the city prioritize the economy growth and the youth demand the environmental justice, how does the IOC advise the organizer to reserve the value conflict and remain the authenticity of their sustainable promise?
The role of IOC is just to give indication. And then they never stand for any position, and then they never stand against or in favor any decisions that a city takes. Because it's a local level then, is not anymore in control of the International Olympic Committee, is in control only of the local organized committee to implement policy and procedure that can respect and take into consideration the youth. In this case, I make one example which is connected with the Olympic Games and is the torch relay. So it's one of those moments of the Olympics that are involved with the Olympics. Often this is the moment where a lot of protests they take place because the flame goes on the roads where the people are and the people then they can protest. Until London 2012, the flame was traveling internationally, and in each country where they were going, they had protests. Those kind of protests can be about anything. At that time was about one of chemical sponsor of the Olympic Games. So here's one of the contradictions we have in this kind of environment. On one side, you promote sustainability, youth engagement, this and that. And the other side, one of your major sponsors is a chemical company, meaning that you bring money from someone that pollutes, kill people, kill the environment. After those protests, just to answer to the question, the position from the International Olympic Committee was, from now on, we do the torch relay only in the country that hosts the games. In that way, they've reduced the risk to be exposed. So they haven't solved the problem. They've reduced the risk. And that is how usually they act toward the local communities and toward the local organized committees. They don't stand to any position. They just give recommendation. They don't have power. But then if they need to act, they act in a way to reduce the risk, not to resolve the problem.
Okay, thank you very much. So what is the return, like the social return of investment of the mega event? How can we measure it?
There are many, many ways to measure it, depending how we want to read the numbers, because you can read in terms of cost, which how much I've spent to organize, put in place everything until the day one of the Olympics, and that you have the column of how much it cost. But then
how about
you
the social return of the investment, like a social impact? How you measure
the social
impact?
Well, if the first things always you measure how much the tourists have spent and left in the city because of the Olympics. So since day one, there are companies, they start to hire people to work or bring new people to work and build the different sites of the events, of the venues, sorry. And that has an impact because you pay local, you bring money, so you bring richness to the people, and that has an impact, positive impact, and that lasts for 6, 7 years. So it's even not the short term. Then you can measure from 40 days before until 30 days after the Olympic Games, how much has been spent in the city, because people, they come, not just athletes and delegation. Think about media, journalists, cameramen, and then new digital media. They bring new people, and then workers, because you think about the delegation like USA, like Canada, they come with more or less 400 athletes, meaning 800 people, just part of the delegation. The rationality is 1-1, one athlete, one accompanier, plus more or less the same number of security people. So you have lots of people around there, and that we're talking just about one country, but that multiplied by the over 200 countries taking part of the Olympic Games is huge numbers. Then you think about the spectators, then you think about the tourists, then you think about the family and friends. They come with the athlete, but then they don't have access to the venues. But still, they eat, they sleep, they travel, so they spend, and that is a social impact. And then you can see how many people that work, so how many laborers has been hired for the entire period. So you gave salary, you gave wages to local people for 6, 7 years. That is a huge, huge impact. So there are multiple aspects that definitely can be taken into consideration. And then the cost to bring back to the normality everything. That is another part, which on one side you spend, but on the other side you spend and you leave again money to the locals, because you need always labor, truck drivers, porter, and so forth.
But this is what you are talking is real capital ROI, the return of investment. But we are asking about a social impact, like something more intangible,
All those companies, all those companies that they work in for those kind of organization, they need to accomplish with certain kind of regulation. So companies, they need to pay to the labor right wages. They need to respect worker rules. They need to respect working hours. And this is intangible, but is a huge asset in terms of shift culture that you live in the society, because then the same people, when they go to work for someone else or they go to work for another project, they pretend to be treated in the same way, to maintain their rights, which before they even didn't know. But even simply safety, the safety working condition that you need to implement to give access to the workers inside the venues is high standard, just because, how you see, they don't want to have people die in their venues. Simply like that. Those kind of rules that are implemented, you elevate the level of culture from working point of view to the local people. Those are not tangible elements, but are very important things. And if you think about all the supply chain involve hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of corporates, local corporates, which if they need to accomplish and stay within this kind of regulation, you leave to them a new way to work from the day after.
Good, great. So how is the authenticity of the environmental commitment? Are they real or are they just greenwashing?
You want the political answer or you want my answer?
Of course, we want your answer.
90% of the cases is brand washing. They promise to do and then they don't do. It's impossible, but it's technically impossible to do. And we need to be very realistic. If I want to save money, I will use local companies. How many local companies? So we're talking about the small one, not the huge one. Companies that are very close to the venues, and the venue, as we said before, they're very spread in a large area of the territory. So if I want to save money, I'm going to take the local one because it's the one that's going to have less cost to make travel the people to the place where they need to work. Those small companies, they have all the equipment, they have all the machinery, they have all the vehicles. And from pollution point of view, the impact is still very high, even if they commit I will use the greenest suppliers as possible. That usually is where I end the sentence. I would not finish the sentence there. I would put a comma and I would say, as long as they are the cheapest one. Because if they're not the cheapest one, forget it. I'm going to use the cheapest one, even if they pollute most. That, unfortunately, is the reality.
But like Judy is an event planner, so like a mega event planner. What kind of a suggestion you will give her to improve this kind of and avoid this kind of greenwashing? What can she do?
Unfortunately, she cannot do anything because she can implement policies and project management in a way that I'm going to use only this kind of suppliers that accomplish with this kind of standard. I want to have the ESG report from any supplier that commit to work for the project, whatever they do. I want to have the safety rules in place. I want to have and see and check the safety equipment used by each worker. But that can be on paper, because then when you shift and you go and check and you take decisions under economical aspect, meaning the procurement always will look only at the money. They will not look at the sustainable impact. Then you will see that who accomplished with those kind of characteristics, it will never be the cheapest one. Never. Because it's not possible so far. Because there is still who doesn't respect the rules and can sell the same service for much less. So who is more sustainable is always more expensive. Who is cheaper is the one that doesn't apply or accomplish all those kind of regulation. They still put through a good offer. And when it comes to the procurement, it's always about money. It's not about anything else. And I can bring another example, Jenny. And I'm convinced about this because I got the bad experience in person with, I'm not going to say the name, but is a huge organizer of car events, motorsport, electric motorsport. We developed a project for a sustainable logistics service, and they have electric vehicles, so sustainability is in their DNA. We brought that one, but also we brought traditional commercial proposal with the cheapest price. When we went to the final conversation presenting the project, they didn't make just one question about the most sustainable project. They went immediately to investigate in the commercial proposal, the second part, which was only about money, because for them was only about that. Even if the other one was make them have a showcase spot on for the very first time for such kind of organization, as I said, with the sustainability inside their DNA, but when it's come to the budget, unfortunately, nowadays it still counts the cheapest offer.
Thank you very much. So, is IOC have using any data tool to measurement the emotional engagement of the participant or their
Yes,
employee?
they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do. Because when we talk about IOC, International Olympic Committee, we need to take into consideration that their asset, so what really they own, it's only the logo of the 5 rings and the word Olympics. Meaning that is only about perception, emotion, impact. And I bring you another very practical example. I don't know if you have ever noticed, McDonald's is a top sponsor of the Football World Cup and is a top global sponsor of the International Olympic Committee.
Yes.
Multi-billionaire contracts, both. So Coca-Cola pay to be the sponsor. But between the two events, there is one major difference. You will never see, and you don't see, and you will never see the logo of Coca-Cola inside the field of play. You see only for the Football World Cup. meaning that is the perception that the people get when the only thing Coca-Cola can say is, I'm the official sponsor of the Olympic Games. They cannot show that because the logo is not there. That comes in the way that they measure the impact, not only for the athlete, but also for the whole environment, which gravitate around the events and around the environment of the IOC, which from Nielsen market research, they have these reports, which is called non-tangible reports, which collect this kind of impression and feelings from the people. And beside that, and then they put a value, money value. But they collect, and for as long as I know, Nielsen is the strongest one to be capable to make this kind of market research analysis. There are other companies, but they don't do the same level. The main reason is because they have started this since 2010, and I was close to them when they started this new adventure to measure the non-tangible elements. So this is part of the answer you were asking.
Okay. So, okay, we almost the time and we almost 1 hour. So give us like very short message. Because I know your career is in between AI, sport, many sector. So few sentence if you want to tell the future generation about building up their career in different country, in different sector. So what kind of the advice you will give to the future generation?
You have mentioned my experience in AI, and I'm going to start from there. The market is evolving, is changing so quickly. My recommendation is stay updated with the changes, or even look to do something that is not there yet, but there is a gap. That will guarantee to you to be unique, to be different, to have less competitors, and at the same time doing something that you can enjoy. So that I believe, and obviously respecting the ethics, because that is the most important things. Sport, there is the ethics, but also there is the other dark side that we didn't touch, which is the doping. We don't want to go there now. So the recommendation is search for something that there is a gap, searching for something that is innovative, bring new ideas on the table, because the new generation is capable and have the strength to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luca, for today accepting us the interview. So everybody still online. Can you switch on your camera and so we can take a photo to like the final record, to the memories? 大家请把你们的video 打开，谢谢。然后我们拍一张大合照。婷珍，你那边拍好吗？
拍咯，
好，1、2。
1、2、3。